Welcome back to another Clamshell tutorial. In the previous tutorial, we set up our project and imported some line items from an AIA 703 spreadsheet. In this tutorial, we're going to see how to edit our schedule of values in Clamshell. We're going to create allowances, edit subcontractors, link subcontractors, and mark up line items. Let's first select our created project. Then, we'll select Schedule of Values. Here, we can see the schedule of values that we imported in the previous tutorial. It's important to note that any changes we make here are saved immediately. Let's get started with our edits. We issued a new contract to Precision Surveying. This subcontractor will be performing the survey on this project. We want to add a new category for our surveying line items, and we want to link those items to Precision Surveying. First, let's create a new work category. In the New Primary Category box, type your category's name and click Add. Notice how Clamshell automatically sorts categories that start with a 6-digit division number. We can add new items to our category by entering information into the green row below our new Survey category header. The first piece of information we need to enter is the resource code for our surveyor. This subcontractor is new on this project, so we'll click New to add a new resource code for our surveyor. We're going to first enter our surveyor's contract number. We're next going to assign a resource code and name for our subcontractor. Clamshell gives us two options. Clamshell will show us all the subcontractors that we already use in other projects at our company, so we can reuse their resource code to avoid redundancy and reduce confusion. We haven't used our surveyor, Precision Surveying, before, so we're going to choose to enter a new resource code and subcontractor name. Finally, we can fill out the information for our first surveying line item, including the description and the scheduled value. Once the information is filled out, we can add the line item. This creates our surveyor subcontractor and its first item all at once. Now that we've created this category, added our subcontractor, and created our first item, we can add more items quickly by typing their information into the green line, then hitting Enter or clicking Add. If the subcontractor and owner value for an item are the same, you only need to enter the subcontractor value. Great! We need to include masonry-related items in our schedule of values. However, we have yet to finalize the subcontractor details and issue the contract. Since we don't yet know who is going to perform the work on these items, I'll select the TBD resource code. The TBD resource code is special in a few ways. Line items assigned to TBD cannot be advanced for billing. This is because Clamshell has to know who is responsible for these line items and how these costs are going to be handled. TBD items are required to be assigned to a subcontractor first, before becoming billable. For more information about advancing items, see our owner billing tutorial. TBD items also don't show up under subcontractors. Instead, they are accounted for in your margin through the pending buyout value. If you want to change the order of line items, use the arrows on the right-hand side. The last thing we want to add to our schedule of values is an allowance. Use allowances when additional funds have been put aside for changes later on in the project. Clamshell handles allowances differently than normal line items. Once you start billing for your project, you can add items to allowances and advance those items to bill for the allowance. We'll cover this in our owner billing tutorial. First, we'll create a new category called Allowances. Creating an allowance is just like creating a normal line item. To make the item an allowance, click its Edit button. Select This line item is an allowance from the owner. Then, click Save Changes. We'll see the item turn gold to indicate that it's an allowance. Let's take a look at our margin. We can see that there's a separate section on the margin for allowances that's distinct from the rest of our contract items. A few more notes about the schedule of values. Just like line items, you can reorder categories by clicking the arrows on their right. For example, I want to move my allowances section to the top, so I'll click the up arrow. If you want to export your schedule of values, click the Excel or PDF buttons. I'm going to download a PDF of my schedule of values. It's exported as a 703. If we want to see all the subcontractors, rather than all the line items, we can navigate to Subcontractors SOV. We can see our subcontractors and their trade and/or scope. Let's add a new subcontractor to our project. This scenario shows a subcontractor who has been issued a contract, but has not provided a schedule of values. Therefore, we cannot establish a link between the subcontractor and the schedule of values. However, it is important to capture the contract value to account for this cost on our margin. We can see that this subcontractor has been added to the margin. the value of the subcontractor shows up on the margin even though it has no items on the schedule of values. However, as we saw previously, we actually do have the masonry work for this project specified. So, now, let's link our masonry subcontractor to our masonry items. We could go and change them each individually, but Clamshell lets us edit multiple line items at once. We'll click the check mark by our masonry category to select all of the masonry items. Then, we'll use the menu in the upper left to edit these items. This menu has many options, but we'll select the Set Resource Code option. We'll then select our newly created masonry subcontractor, Pinnacle Masonry, or PIM. Clamshell is going to show us a warning here, because we are replacing Pinnacle Masonry's fixed contract of $12,150 with these items, which have a total subcontractor value of $13,365. I know this is because we contracted the work to PIM for 10% less than originally estimated. However, we still want to bill the owner for the original full amount. Let's go back and make these changes before linking the items. We can see that each item has a value assigned for both the subcontractor and the owner. Clamshell calls the difference between these two values the variance. We could adjust the variance for each item manually. However, I want to set a uniform 10% variance across all the masonry items. With the items already selected, I can go back to the upper left menu and select Set Variance Percentage. Clamshell gives you the option to either change the owner value or the subcontractor value. I want to set the subcontractor value to 10% less than the owner value, so I'm going to choose the second option and enter 10%. I'll click Change Variance to apply this to my items. We can see that the result of this action is to decrease the subcontractor value for each of these items, such that it is 10% less than the unchanged owner value. Now, I'll reselect my items, and go back to the Set Resource Code option. This time, there's still a warning that we're replacing PIM's fixed contract. However, because I adjusted the values of the items in the previous step, we can see that the values are now the same. Because the values are the same, I know that my project contract amount won't change. I'll click Change Resource Codes to assign the selected items to PIM. Now, if we go back to the subcontractors listing, we can see that Pinnacle Masonry is linked to the Masonry section. Once your schedule of values is completed, reviewed, and approved, you can finalize it in Clamshell by marking it Approved. Modifications beyond this point will then become limited. Once approved, changes to the project information and schedule of values can only be made by an administrator. However, you can modify the project's contract in future billings. See our contract modification video for information on how to do this. There might be a few things you want to fill out under the Margin Report Setup tab before you approve your project setup. See our Margin Report tutorial for more information. Click the Approve button to finish approving your SOV. Now, we're ready to create our first progress billing. Thanks for following along on this Clamshell tutorial. It's now time to start billing for our project. I'd recommend you watch the Owner Billing tutorial next.